Aloha, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. I've been a fan of heritage tourism and a promoter of heritage tourism for a long time, so I'm really happy that we have been able to put this conference on and that you're all in attendance here. The title of this particular session is The Rise of the Heritage Tourism and Why Suntans and Tais no longer are enough. My goodness, we've been talking about this for years and years and years. And how long have we said that we need to move beyond sun, sand, surf? Probably as long as I remember, and I'm getting pretty old. The problem that we have is that we know we need to change. We know we need to make this message about Hawaii more robust and more related to the wonderful things that we have here. The question is how to do it and why we haven't done it already. We know that we need to move away from sun, sand, surf because the sun is really a commodity. If you think about it, it's the same sun that provides our beautiful sunsets and our warm weather here is the same sun that's in Mauritius and Phuket and Mexico and the Caribbean. So the sun is not a distinguishing feature. Beautiful places are not a distinguishing feature, and people really admire our beauty, and that's actually part of the problem. I think one of the reasons we haven't changed is there isn't a sense that we need to change. And I'm a big believer in research, but I think one of the reasons that we don't believe we need to change is we do focus groups. When you do a focus group and you ask people to talk about Hawaii, they say, oh, Hawaii, it's beautiful, and oh, the weather is terrific. And so people take that message and they say, well, we need to say that in our advertising and our marketing. Well, the problem is that they already know that we're beautiful. They already know that we have wonderful weather. They already know that we have great beaches. And over time, we simply reinforce this existing image about Hawaii rather than embellishing that image by saying, what else do we have? What more do we have going on for us? So even though I'm a believer in focus groups, I think they can mislead. Steve Jobs of Apple said he never wanted to do research. I think that's a little extreme. But when you do research, you really have to, and I'm going to go through a little research, and so is Jerry, but you really have to dig into it and find out what else do people want to know about Hawaii? What else do we have to offer? I couldn't resist this because it's Halloween. So this particular, this represents a marketing concept that I've often said when I talk about Hawaii. We have the curse of a strong brand. What is the curse of a strong brand? That's a brand that is so well entrenched, that has such a well-defined image that it's very, very difficult to change. And what that means is if we really are serious about changing Hawaii, about expanding beyond the sun, sand, surf perception that people have, we need to work very hard at doing it. We need to be focused at it. We need to be applying resources to it, because the first thing people think about when they think about Hawaii is sun, sand, surf. Obviously, just talk to your friends. Anybody say, what do you think about? Well, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, the weather is terrific. Yeah, we got that. And so we need to get beyond the curse of the strong brand. Just as an example, what are other cursed brands? Does anybody remember when Las Vegas tried to approach the family market? And what happened? Nobody's going to believe easily that Las Vegas is a family destination. I was amused to see that a Porsche introduced an SUV. Really, when you think of Porsche, you don't think of kids in the back seat and car carriers and things like that. So those brands are hard to change. And in fact, Vegas gave up on the whole idea of the family market and went back to its roots of what goes in Vegas stays in Vegas. We are a mature brand too, and what that means is that we're beyond our growth stage. We're beyond the stage where people are just learning about Hawaii. They know where we are. They have friends that have been here, even if they haven't been here themselves. And so, for those people who are familiar with Hawaii, they're often looking at, what do I do next? Where do I go for my next vacation? What else is out there? So we're beyond the go-go years, and we need to work harder to keep our existing constituencies engaged and attract those people, those new visitors that have a lot of options out there in the marketplace. If you look at Hawaii, we're not going to grow by building many new resorts. Most of the prime resort land has already been developed. So we need to think about how to grow economically in a world where we're not going to build a lot more hotels. And one of the ways we do that is to increase visitor spending and to maintain our customer loyalty by providing a really superlative visitor experience. And I believe that's going to come from heritage tourism. The risk, of course, for mature brands is that people say, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Even for those people who love Hawaii, if you've been here 6 or 7 or 8 times from the continent, then your next trip you may say, well, you know, there are new resorts in Mexico or there are new resorts in the Caribbean and maybe I'll try those out. Or for our Japan market friends, there are new resorts in Vietnam or Phuket or other places. So we need to be very aware that we've got this mature issue and the been there, done that, got the t-shirt issue. So the risks that we face really are related to that idea that we have the curse of a strong brand and we have a mature brand. And you can look at the essence of the risk that we face as a destination, first by saying that we have a lot more competition than we've ever had before. If you go around the world, and I've been talking to developers who are building resorts in Vietnam and in Thailand and in Mexico, and they're new resorts and they reflect the latest and greatest in terms of resort development. I once talked to a wholesaler and I said, so tell me, if you had to describe my problem in promoting Hawaii, what's my problem? And he said, you guys have 4-star resorts at 5-star prices and Mexico has 5-star resorts at 4-star prices. So you need to find that extra something, that little bit of extra that justifies that extra price. We have an aging visitor infrastructure. We were driving around yesterday and I drove by the Ilikai. Ilikai is 50 years old this year. Sheraton Waikiki was built, what, in the 70s, late 70s? So we have our prime hotels, many of which are 40 or 50 years old. Even on the neighbor islands, which are more recently developed, we have hotels that are 20, 25 years old now. And we're competing with destinations that have brand new resorts, really glitzy, really cool. And we're competing against those resorts, competing against the likes of Las Vegas, Singapore. Has anybody been to Singapore recently? I did a project in Singapore. I believe they spent $5 billion on developing Sentosa Island and Harborfront. Look at the pictures. These resorts are out of this world, and they truly are stiff competitors for us. We will always have high costs, as was mentioned this morning in the opening session, which, by the way, was a great session. We're 2,500 miles from anywhere, so we have to ship everything in. Cost of living is high, cost of labor is high, cost of land is high, so we're never going to be able to compete on the basis of price. So that again says that we have to find another way to compete. And finally, we have a high percentage of visitors from our established markets who are repeat or multiple repeat visitors, and let's take a look at that. This is a graph that shows repeat visitation. The baseline is for the state, and we've got about 65% of our visitors to the state now that are repeat visitors. But look at the West Coast, over 80%, and it continues to grow. The East Coast used to be a market where we could rely on bringing in new visitors, and they're over 50% repeaters. The Japan market is about 60%, and Canada is about average with the state in terms of repeat visitation. So these people are those people who have the potential to say, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, what have you got for me lately? What's new in Hawaii? Fortunately, the Hawaii Tourism Authority has lots and lots of research, and thank you. And I recommend that we take a look at some research that's called a marketing effectiveness study. In this study, we ask a bunch of questions, or HTA has a bunch of questions. I used to, but HTA does now. And one of the things we ask is, what's important to you when you take a major leisure trip? So that's the first question. And then they ask right after that, they ask the question about different destinations. How well do you think that destination relates to what's important to you? Now, I'm only going to show you some of the data. There's a lot of data there, but obviously relaxation, sunshine, all those things score very high. But as I said, we all know that Hawaii has those things. But I took a look at some other attributes that, that define us and that we offer to see if they're important to visitors. So this is a question, how important is this to you? And this, the percentages I'm going to show you are the percentages of people that say these things are very important. Variety of unique experiences, different from other places, offers an authentic experience, whatever that means. Many historic and cultural things to do, intriguing cultural and history. Wow. Over 70%, 73% variety of unique experiences. They want a lot to do here, different than other places. 67% say it's important to have an authentic experience. So culture is not some minor issue. It's a driving force for these visitors. So then we ask, okay, if these attributes are important to you, what destinations do you think have that? And one of them, of course, is Hawaii. And you can see that there's something of a gap here. It's not terrible, but we have room to improve. 52% of the people say that Hawaii has a variety of unique experiences. 42%, only 42% say we're different than other places. Ooh, and we are different than other places. I see Andy Witt in the back. We took him around yesterday. He's from Florida, and I think he didn't fully understand, coming from the East Coast, how different we are, but we are. And we have room to improve that by communications. Many historical and cultural things to do, only 37%. This is the US market, by the way. Intriguing culture and history, only 39%. Europe, of course, is seen as a cultural destination. 69% say that it has many historic and cultural things to do. Mexico, because of the colonial heritage and the Aztec heritage. Australia, 38%. So we're right behind Hawaii, but right behind Australia, but we certainly have room to grow there. That was the US market. Oh, by the way, the good news is that we're the only beach destination that even scores well there. So while we're doing okay, we have room to improve. Take a look at the Japan market. A lot of people have a misperception about Japan, that they're only here for shopping. But when you ask them what's important, different than other places, 76%, actually these scores are even a little bit higher in terms of the importance of these attributes than the US market. However, when it comes to saying, does Hawaii deliver on these heritage tourism, we score even lower than the US. They don't think of us in those terms, but they want it. Where do they look for many historic and cultural things to see and do? China, Australia. Hawaii scores at 27%, Korea 20%. And poor Guam only gets about 17% for people saying that it has any cultural things to see or do. So how do you deal with the been there, done that, got the t-shirt? You deal with that with product news. And many marketers will say that product news is the lifeblood of marketing. It's true in fast foods, it's true in cars. What have you got that's the newest, the best, the greatest, the latest? And we're competing with other new resorts who are offering new things, new resorts, new activities. So we're at risk if we don't have something new to compete with. Some destinations build new attractions, like Singapore, new resorts like Mexico and Thailand and the Seychelles. And certainly this is true in Las Vegas. If you look at what Las Vegas does is it simply blows up its current old infrastructure and builds the new. Now, we can't do that. Cost of land, cost of construction, zoning regulations that are going to keep building new buildings on old sites where you've got tighter restrictions, that's just not going to happen. So, what can we do? This is the Outrigger Waikiki. One of the things you can do is remodel, revamp, renovate with an eye to including a Hawaiian sense of place. And I think Outrigger, and I know there are other people here, if I had an hour to speak, I'd talk about a lot of resorts that do this in Hawaii, but I think Outrigger Waikiki did a terrific job of including things like the Kanakapila Grill. So not only do you have the ambience of Hawaii, you've got Hawaiian music and really cool Hawaiian music. And then the decor in the resort itself. So what do we do if we can't build new products? Where do we find new products? Where do we find this product news? Well, I would say that we have product news. It just hasn't been discovered yet. And that product news really is our heritage attractions and places. This is taken from the state data book. It's just a list, and this is only a partial list of attractions in Hawaii. And look at the numbers. I know they're hard to see, but a lot of these places don't have very high levels of visitation, so they really are undiscovered. And even for places like the Missouri, which is on here, you can see that we have room to improve. We have lots of upside potential. We have lots of our repeat visitors that haven't seen those things that are our heritage. The good news is technology enables our visitors to find these places. Peer-to-peer, whoops, what's happening there? Peer-to-peer sites like Yelp and TripAdvisor give people real reviews of these places, and GPS lets them find it. And the consumer is changing. We've got the selfie generation. Why do people travel now? Why do people go to restaurants that are off the beaten path? They want to take that picture and put it on Instagram. You know, this is what people do. They want to tell people that I've discovered something new. And 20 or 30 years ago, people wanted to go to the A-list. They wanted to see what everybody else saw in Hawaii. And now they want to see something that they can brag about that only they have discovered. Some other good news, the product is great. This is from the satisfaction survey that's done by Hawaii Tourism Authority. So if you look at this, scores for activities and attractions, over 90% are either very satisfied or somewhat satisfied among the US market. Japanese are a little pickier, but even so, we get very good scores there. And we're seeing a search for authenticity. These are Japanese visitors on the upper left that have discovered Lanikai juice. Everybody live in Kailua. The Japanese are all over, and they're looking for the neighborhood. They're looking to be where we are. The KCC Farmers Market gets 7,500 people on a Saturday, and 30% of those are visitors. Kanakapila Grill has people just coming up and doing hula, really cool. And the media are no longer just talking about the beach, no longer just talking about the resorts. They're talking about where you can find the authentic Hawaii experience. So who's promoting cultural tourism? There's an organization called the Cultural Traveler. They've very kindly sent us, they package cultural tours around the country, and they've provided us with a copy of their brochure, which you can get at the in the exhibit hall at the Historic Hawaii desk. Historic Hotels of America, Roberta Rinker-Ludloff here. We have people that prefer to stay in heritage hotels. They want to stay at the Moana. They want to stay at the Royal. They want to stay at those beautiful old places that have a sense of ambiance that you just can't find in newer hotels. Rhodes Scholar, I believe this used to be Elder Hostel. I have an aunt who was in her 80s. She grew up in a small town in upstate Pennsylvania, and she really never went away from home. And I called her one year and I said, "How are you doing, Aunt Esther?" And she said, "Well, I just came back from Costa Rica." I said, "Wow." And it was an elder hostel experience, and she went there to see what's up in the world. And certainly destinations. This is Mexico, and they're showing the place you thought you knew. That's an issue that we have to face in Hawaii. People think that you know us. So how do we break that curse? We need to be true to ourselves. We need to be authentic. We need to tell our story. We need to highlight the unexpected. We can't continue just to say the same old things about Hawaii. We have to tell people what they don't know. Can you break the mold? Cadillac is a good example of a brand that's trying to do that. It's your father's, your grandfather's luxury car, and they introduced a radically redesigned car that they got wrappers to endorse. It's still a question whether they're going to be successful or not, but they're certainly doing what they need to do to try to escape the curse of a brand. So how can Hawaii do that? Back in the 80s, I worked for an advertising agency, Melissa, which still has the advertising account for HVCB. And we did a campaign about what you didn't know about Hawaii. One of them was, had the headline, it was a print ad, said, "Come see the great cathedrals of Hawaii." Where are the great cathedrals? Well, they're in Europe. No, they're not. We have our own version of that. And so what we need to do is stop people, say, you need to rethink Hawaii. It's more than you realize. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Agrusa, who's going to take us through some other research about these visitors.
Thank you, Frank. I'm going to share with you some of the results of a study we did on heritage and culture. As we said before, you see these beautiful pictures of beaches. The problem is none of these are Hawaii. They're our competition. This is, but, you know, with increasing competition, the beach destinations, Hawaii has to differentiate itself from the competitors, as Frank said. And, you know, one of the things that we could do is we looked at what the tourist really felt. And, you know, heritage tourism focuses not just on historical and cultural features of the place and region, but it also helps get the tourist off the road or the beaten path. And I always like this picture because it shows that, you know, we have the surfboards, but then we're actually going a little, as Frank mentioned before, the Japanese right now in Kailua, when I was driving up there, just culturally, because they drive on the opposite side of the road. Even the bicycle, they were on the right when they should have been on the left on the bike path, so all the cars were backed up. And I was going over to Kailua to go to help with a golf tournament. It was amazing. Here's an example of in Bali, showing these folks that they were off the beaten path. They were at some temples. Also, heritage and cultural tourism helps encourage local residents to be more engaged with the tourist because they're involved from the beginning in deciding how the culture will be represented. And I was on a couple of panels here at HTA on some of the conflict that we're having now with tourists going to destinations that they never were before, especially with the big buses. There was a big, I guess there's a conflict between the big buses taking up all the parking places in Kailua, as well as those that sit outside the houses. And when those buses run because they want to keep the air conditioner on for the tourist, that makes a lot of noise, a lot of pollution for those people that are on those side streets. So finally, I think now they put in some kind of mandate or something, right, to push that out. But what you want to do is if we help look at more of the heritage and cultural tourism, we have to make sure that we get the local residents involved, because then they feel that they're part of the mission when we're doing it. Travelers, again, also no longer just satisfied with looking for something more unique experience. And, you know, here in Hawaii we have, you know, the hula, but also heritage tours is interesting in learning new things on their trip. And looking at different places that more let the local residents go to. And a lot of people don't even have seen this statue before in Waikiki. And we can differentiate ourselves from a beach destination with our heritage and culture, with the aloha spirit. And I always enjoy this picture because it just shows exactly what Hawaii is. Some of the other recent trends that we have here related to heritage and cultural tourism, we actually trying to integrate it into our management style at some of our businesses. On Lure Street, a number of the restaurants, as well as Robert's Hawaii. They took a sense of place training. And what we did, we looked at this study that we had. We examined the level of the visitors' demand for heritage tourism experiences in Hawaii, and we looked at the reintegration of Hawaiian heritage and culture. The survey, we developed 23 questions on the instrument. We looked at both the demographics, Hawaiian heritage and culture, and the travel and image. We distributed 400 surveys, 200 in Japanese and 200 in English-speaking tourists. Of the Japanese, we were fortunate to get back 181, which is over a 90% return rate of usable surveys. And for the English-speaking, we got 185, which is a 92.5%. Some of the findings we found: respondents were asked if they were interested in Hawaiian heritage and culture, and you could see over 85%. This is just in line of what Frank said earlier. These questions were specific for Hawaiian heritage and culture, not just heritage as a whole. The respondents were also asked if they experienced Hawaiian heritage or culture during their stay, and almost 87% said yes. When the respondents were asked if the Hawaii tourism experience should be more authentic, you can see that almost 80% or 78% said it should be more authentic. And actually, it was a higher number for the Japanese. The Japanese felt that it was, but they felt it could be more integrated into their total experience. Hotels, tours, even in the restaurants. Some of the other findings, we asked what are some of the things that they did experience. Authentic hula performance. They felt that there should be Hawaiian music was one of the high things. And also learning some of the things such as lei making or watching authentic Hawaiian craft making. And the language. You know, when you meet a lot of people, and we always tease that at the university, do you know any Hawaiian words? Everybody says, yes, I know how to say trash can, mahalo. And that's because we have that on all the trash cans, and that not everybody understands that that's thank you. That was a joke. You guys could be my students, except you have to pay tuition and sleep. Okay, some of the other respondents were asked how you would rate some of their own knowledge. And you could see that they feel that their own knowledge is not very strong. Average is 50%, but if you look at high, very high, and moderately high, we don't even hit 13%. So that they want it, but they feel that they haven't been able to learn it. So they want it more involved in their whole experience, their tourist experience. When they asked how important it was for them to come in contact with Hawaiian residents, as Frank said earlier, you could see that it's becoming more and more. 65% said yes. And in other studies that I've done here over the years, always seems that now we have the Japanese tourists that are here, but we have the new Chinese tourists. One of the biggest things the Chinese tourists want, I don't want to go where Chinese tourists are. They're Chinese, but they don't want to go where Chinese tourists are. They want to go where the locals are. And in the Japanese, that was one of the biggest things that we found out through over the years of all the studies that we've done. One of the things is they feel there's too many Japanese. Well, you're Japanese. Yeah, that's right. There's too many Japanese. Yep. Our respondents were asked how important it was to experience some of the native heritage and culture during their stay. You can see that almost 80% said it's very important. Also, we asked how important it was for them to understand and respect Hawaiian heritage and culture. Again, extremely high. Over 80% said it's important. And actually the Japanese, it was over 89% felt it was very important to understand and respect the culture, higher than the English-speaking tourists. And the English-speaking tourists were both from Canada, Europe, as well as the mainland United States. And there were a few Australians, just a few. When we asked how their overall satisfaction, you can see that we rate very, very high. Almost over 93% said yes. We enjoyed our vacation. We had satisfied with our tour. But as Frank said earlier, we are having many, many repeat visitors. I thought I saw some stats saying that it's over 50 or 60% of everyone who's coming now is repeat. They want something new. They want something different. And in conclusion, with some of the increased interest on heritage and cultural aspects of Hawaii, there is an opportunity for Hawaii to differentiate itself from other destinations, which are, again, sun, sand, and sea. And I, can't agree more with Frank that our image and our brand is so strong. It's so strong. When you think of Hawaii, you think of, relaxation, beach. That's why it's so difficult for us to have business meetings. Because even with the students, when the students call up home and they tell the parents, I'm studying hard. You're studying hard on the beach? It just doesn't equate. It just doesn't equate. Because the brand is so strong that we've been always a place to come to relax, to come to sit and, enjoy the sun, that it's going to be very difficult. I know APEC, I don't know if anyone's done a specific study on that, but you wouldn't want to do the study on asking the tourists that are here if they felt the image has changed. You need to go back and ask where those folks came from Tokyo, from Jakarta, from Bangkok, those places. Do you think that you could have a business meeting here? Because of that brand, it's very difficult to get people to believe that you and I that live here, we know that we work hard and it isn't just all sun, sand, and sea. We don't just have that every day. I think that The Descendants, the movie The Descendants, when that image when you hear George Clooney in the beginning, first they show the beaches and then they show the traffic jams on H1 and the homeless person pushing the shopping cart. People don't even think that even exists. They really, really don't. They just think that all of us take canoes to work and surf to class, and yeah, I mean it. And also, the emphasis, therefore, needs to be focused on offering the tourists what they are looking for, and in addition, benefit from the trend right now of this heritage and cultural tourism. As Frank's data showed, that there's been a huge push, and that's partly, I think, due to the fact that there's so many of us that are in the baby boom era. Those of us that are born from 1946 to 64. Every day, 10,000 Americans turn 65. They're not looking to surf the big waves. They're looking to learn more about heritage and culture. And there's a lot of people with a lot of money. And, just even simple things as lei making. Cultural performances, dining experiences with more Hawaiian food, lectures actually on local culture and history. I heard this morning that there's going to be some storytelling with the Halloween. She's got a Halloween little thing on here today, trick-or-treating, but more on some of the storytelling. I think that that's become more and more. And health and healing. We have Lomi Lomi massage. We have certain natural things that are done here for health and revitalization that makes us unique. If nurtured properly, heritage and cultural tourism will allow the tourist to leave the region with the wonderful memories of enjoyment and with a deeper appreciation of the community that it had represented. If it's well managed, heritage and cultural tourism allows a community to speak for itself, to have input on how it wants to be represented, and communicating these possibilities of reintegration of Hawaiian heritage and culture to both businesses will be essential for the success of the sustainability. Aloha, mahalo for listening. If I have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to open it up for questions right now. If you have a question, you can come up to the microphone.
Good morning. My name is Kehao. I found that really valuable, the data about the knowledge of Hawaiian history and what percentage that they represent of that knowledge. But I think a bigger question is, what percentage of our residents have the knowledge, right? So 1.4 million, maybe 20% of the population is Hawaiian. And so maybe we can find out how much our actual residents have a relationship with the culture, which I think would impact our tourism industry, because if you're putting tourists into a community with locals, and if our locals don't identify with that goal, then I think we're not going to have that connect authentically.
Great comment, great question. I was involved in the tourism strategic plan back in 2004-05, and if you go back and read that plan, it really recognizes that that it's not just about the visitor; it's about the interaction with the visitor and the community, and it's about sensitizing the community to its own heritage, culture, and history, so that when we share it responsibly and accurately. A lot of the training that we do at Kapi'olani Community College, we do tour guide training. I mean, if you don't train the tour guides, they say whatever they want to say. So it's not only a question of having the knowledge, but sharing the knowledge, and that's going to be an ongoing issue. But yes, if you're going to have an authentic experience, whatever that is, and that's certainly open to debate, you need to involve the community.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that we've done in past research is we looked at the residents' perception of tourism. I've done this in Bali, Fiji, Tahiti, and I did it here too. And one of the things that you find is you ask them if they work in the tourism industry. First, you ask if they do, and then you ask them if one of their family members do. If they do, or their family members do, they rate it very high. They think that tourism's okay. But if they don't work, or a family member directly works in the tourism industry, they think the tourists are hassle, they cause traffic jams, they're nothing but, what do they say over there in Maui? What does Kay always say in the vet classroom? We have a young lady from Maui who is in the hospitality field, and all her friends that aren't in it, they have a term where they look down upon the tourists. The tourists are nothing but hassle in Maui. They block the roads and so on. And we have the same thing here, like in the North Shore. Well, a lot of people that now with the new development up there, you get people that say, we don't need any more tourists. We don't need any more tourists. And if we don't share with them, and if they don't believe that they are involved in it from the beginning, number one, and they don't understand how valuable it is, then we have that divide.
You have another question? Okay, thanks.
It's not a question, and I'm Antia Miller from the North Shore Chamber of Commerce, so I'm glad you brought that up. We've done some of our own surveys on the North Shore. We're also the Haleiwa Main Street program, and for those of you who don't know what a Main Street program, it's the main program that the National Trust for Historic Preservation has for maintaining your historic towns. So we've done a lot of training of docents. We do the arts festival tours. We've been doing little lectures, and it's mostly geared towards the residents because we really don't know our history out there, and we're a historic town. So people come in and say, what's historic about Haleiwa? There's nothing to tell them what's historic about it. So a couple of comments. One is, I've said this to Frank before, I don't think we do a very good job at all of making our history available to the visitors. And the second comment is, if we don't deal with our infrastructure issues like on the North Shore, it's just going to backfire on the whole tourism industry. So we really need to address that as a tourist industry.
Thank you. And North Shore has actually done some really terrific stuff. When I was at HTA, you should keep talking to HTA. You guys were able to do some tack-on questions to some existing research that they did, so it was inexpensive research specifically focused on the North Shore, so you understand your community and the visitor interaction with that community. Terrific, terrific case study. In terms of interpretation, I'm so excited about technology. Everybody's got a smartphone now. We have the opportunity to have, Joe Recca doesn't. Anyway, we have the opportunity for many people to use technology to get interpretive information about sites that we never could before. So look for that to change things, I hope.
Just to add to that, I was on a panel yesterday with a gentleman who uses the technology for the Chinese visitor. He has a company that has all the sites that it converts it in. You don't need to download the app. He has it and he has it all in Chinese for them. So they not just read it, they can hear it. And I just gave a presentation on the North Shore residents of Hawaii in Vietnam last month on their perceptions of the development up there. So the paper's not fully built, but when it is, I'll send it to you. Yep.
Joe Reck, I'm the cultural historian for Waikiki. Dr. George Kanahele got it 30 years ago. And about 15 years ago, I was brought aboard to become his first cultural historian for the Waikiki Historic Trails. A Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association that was founded by Dr. Kanahele had a budget that allowed several tours every week to the visitor as well as the kama'aina to be able to visit Waikiki. Waikiki used to boast lipoa. It used to have 3 streams running from the ko'olau. It used to have some of the most beautiful, thriving fish ponds. What are the powers that be doing with all these wonderful surveys? We can have all the percentages that tell us exactly what should be done. We were doing it 15 years ago, and then the budget cuts happen. We've got to do this, we've got to do that. I spoke to a group of people from the business community. I told them that if we don't malama Waikiki, they're turning right now Kalakaua. We're going to be taking down Kalakaua Avenue, which was one Waikiki Beach access road, and we're going to put up Rodeo Drive. When are we going to wake up? Because if we don't, our identity as Hawaii will be lost. And all these surveys not going to mean a thing. And we need to wake up and say, let's stop. The Waikiki hotels, how many of the hotels are inviting NAHA to provide historians to tell people about this wonderful place? Every time I do it, local as well as visitors, they say, my goodness, I didn't know this. And they leave with a better appreciation of our Waikiki. And I'm so, I'm so intense about this because I love Waikiki. And if we don't take care of just this little portion, every place else, all the businesses, every place else will lose business as well. Because who's going to want to come 2,000 miles to this place to do business? They can go someplace else. But we're not special anymore. We've got to work on being special again. And NAHA has been doing it, or trying to do it for years. I think I had a question there.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for coming. This is the first Heritage Tourism Conference. We hope it's not the last. And the concluding session, which I hope you'll all stay for, is, okay, so what? So what do we do next? And we'll gather all those comments and thoughts and provide them to HTA. And then it's all of our responsibility to be like Joe and to raise those issues and say, how do we all individually and collectively make this place the special place that we know it is? Let
me just add a quick thing. Joe, I agree that there are we have lost a lot of it. I was fortunate enough to come here. I moved to teach at HPC in 1989. So I met Dr. Kanahele. That there are hotels that have shifted, like Frank showed, the Outrigger Reef, how they when they redid the $93 million into it, you can see that they put a sense of place inside. And they have Hawaiian music every day. And they do have lei making there. And there are other hotels that do that as well. But there's many of them had it, in the 70s, they shifted. They gave the tourists what they wanted. They wanted rock and roll music. They saw that on the TV. They saw Elvis playing. They went that route instead of going to Hawaiian cultural music or heritage music. And you can see now it's coming back. There is a drawback. There is people that are coming back into that. Music is one of the ways that they're doing it, as well as with lei making and other native Hawaiian carvings and things like that. They are bringing it to the hotels, and the tourist is the one who demanding it. But you can see that as from the research, the tourists want more. They want more.
My name is John Knox, and I'd like to just sort of ask a follow-up question from Joe. I think we've got cultural tourism at a couple of different levels, geographical levels, and I think some of the most exciting stuff is what Ramsey's been talking about in terms of what's happening out in the communities, but inevitably that's going to be a fairly small percentage of tourists. And I think a lot of the issues, Frank, that you were raising really go to the mainstream of the tourists, and on this island that is Waikiki primarily. So actually my question is really to the audience. Do we have anybody representing any of the major hotels or other commercial institutions of Waikiki who can kind of talk about any of the difficulties from the perspective of those businesses in doing this? Because I think that's what we would all like to see. We would like to see culture not just as the icing on the cake, but big cake. But that has some challenges, and is there anybody here to really tell us about those challenges?
It's Kelly, Royal Hawaiian Hotel.
Ready to duke it out with Joe. Because I believe at the Royal Hawaiian, and certainly with Starwood Hotels in Waikiki.
Kelly, can you use the
I
mic?
don't need a microphone.
Ololo needs you to use the microphone.
Okay. No, I appreciate that so much, Joe. And Joe and I have had an opportunity to talk often. And we've had an opportunity to bring him before a lot of our clients and customers. Sometimes when we have groups that say, gosh, perception, Joe is a closer. And the reason why he's a closer is because he does share the authentic experience of Waikiki. And so with that, I will say, I know our culture within Starwood in Hawaii is very strong and steeped. Can we do it better? Absolutely. But do we truly communicate with all of our ambassadors, our staff, and our associates? What is the core, our host culture? Absolutely. Each and every day, in all that we do, it is what we communicate. And are there some simple elements that we can do with our visitors? Yes, and we do them. Naming our suites Hawaiian names for people who lived in that place before us. And maybe that sounds a bit commercial. We don't think so, because we can share the story of the people who were before us. And so that is what we do at the Royal Hawaiian. I know it's what we do at the Moana. I know it's deep of what we do at the Princess Ka'iulani and at the Sheraton Waikiki in a wonderfully modern way, because there is that balance. Some of it is the new Hawaii, and what is it that those newer visitors are looking for. And it's been exciting for us, certainly with Starwood in Hawaii, to be able to take the culture and ensure that we're sharing it with each and every one of our visitors and our guests that are coming. And the wahine who said, what about who's working there? It's where it has to start. Absolutely where it has to start. So I feel very strong with the direction we're going in. And can we get better? Absolutely. And we are. I mean, we have a beautiful experience at the Royal. I wish I could do it every night. It's called Aha'aina. And this is our version of the luau, which it truly is not a luau. It's a celebration of the music, the song, the dance, and the history of that place. And so we're very excited that we have a lot of great things going on. So I just wanted to say, of a major hotel company, I think we're doing it well.
Can I add that, yes, we do have a way to go.
Yes.
For those of us who are of a certain age, I can see the progress, but I can also see the opportunities to go further. I came to Hawaii in 1972, and Waikiki was a completely different place. We didn't have the sensitivity of the culture. Now, you look at what Starwood is doing, look at what Aulani is doing, you look at what Outrigger is doing, and we're moving the needle, but you all have to help HTA and others move the needle even further and faster. I think that's the role, that's the challenge I would leave with you.
Okay, last question or comment?
Aloha, Pono Shem from Enterprise Honolulu. I rarely go to conferences. Some of you who host them know I don't show. But this was real important. I was just a little boy, and my father used to take me to the house without a key to listen to Joe. And it was just one of the most wonderful things to just listen to Joe sing. The reason why I'm here is because it was the spring of 2009, and my friend Mike McCartney was appointed to the Hawaii Tourism Authority. This is a talk on apathy. And the first night that he was asked to address, well, the next day he was supposed to address the tourism industry for the first time, Mike called me. And he asked me if I would talk to whom I talked to, Mike Kupuna. If there was a message that was important for him to deliver. And if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, So the next morning I called Mike at 8 in the morning and I said it came. And I shared with him some things that he could share if he wanted to. And Mike chose to share those things. And the next day in the PBN, Mike McCartney got railed. That this was about heads in beds and butts in seats, and what he's talking about the Queen and Antipilahi Paki. Mike and all of us, Mike is a non-apathetic person. And I think that that's what this call to action for us to be here is all about, what Joe was talking about. That Mike had so much courage to do that, and it hurt, because the next day he called me and he said, I just wanted to talk to somebody who's a friend, because right now I don't feel like I have too many friends. And I was in economic development meetings at the legislature with the Senate caucus on tourism. And I was there with two of the most prominent economists who were asked, when is it going to recover after the 2009 downturn? And it was to get to 2000 levels, maybe 2013, 2014. And then the tsunami hit. Maybe 15, maybe 17. The best who's supposed to know everything were so wrong, because less than a year later, the momentum started to build post-tsunami, and that's because Mike McCartney understands the power of aloha. The economists don't. It was about relationships, and Mike was rebuilding those relationships. So it's just a talk on apathy. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to Frank and Jerry, and thank you all of you in the audience today.